Together with the introduction of the printing press, the political and religious effervescence that followed the Italian Renaissance, so favored by Matthias Corvinus, had a profound effect on cultural life, especially within the German community. One name worthy of mention is that of Johannes Honterus, whose Latinized surname reflects a popular trend in Germany at that time, a very influential German scholar who introduced the Lutheran Reformation to Brasov in 1541. The cultural awakening he initiated and spread among the Hungarians, especially in Cluj. It was inevitable that such a vast movement would also affect the Romanians, especially as Protestant proselytism became increasingly active. Its influence was indirectly exerted through the printing press, which produced the first translation of religious texts into Romanian. One of the most important reforms brought about by the Principalities was the use of local languages instead of Latin during religious services. That is why German printing houses in Transylvania encouraged Romanians to translate the religious texts from Old Church Slavonic to Romanian. Deacon Coresi, who had begun his printing work in Wallachia, moved to Transylvania, where he enjoyed the support of the German elite and had access to better technology. Soon after, however, Orthodox Church authorities in both Wallachia and Transylvania became alarmed by the Zadal heretical interpretation, clearly influenced by Protestant ideas, creeping into Romanian texts as they were being translated. Their fears temporarily slowed the pace of these translations, coinciding with the reign of Lăpușneanu in Moldavia and its violent reaction to that of the Protestant Iacov Heraclides. This hit not only the Protestants, who were forcibly brought back into the true faith, but also the important Armenian minority. The motivation here was not only religious, but also economic, since the Armenians were very successful merchants, and since the Armenian Church is seen as heretical by the Orthodox. Nevertheless, it must be said that despite the strong resistance of the Orthodox Church to Protestant ideas appearing in Romanian religious texts, the move towards religious literature in our language continued and led to magnificent cultural achievements both in Wallachia and Moldavia during the following century. Politically, the liberal thinking influence in Transylvania was strangely accompanied by a worsening situation for the peasantry. I have briefly mentioned the Great Peasant Revolt of 1514, led by Gheorghe Doja, who was executed in the most horrendous manner. John Zapolia's subsequent repression saw the peasants crushed under even heavier dues in money and labor, even the sekeles, and bound to the land, meaning they were not allowed to move from one master to another. The domination of Hungarian nobility in the provinces became overbearing, as the awakening and then disintegration of royal authority removed the last counterweight to its power. The new Assembly of Estates was controlled by Hungarian nobles, without the assent of which a new Transylvanian prince was practically unable to govern. The Diet, as it was called, could elect him, but after Hungary had submitted to the suzerainty of the Porte, Transylvanian princes had to be confirmed by the Sultan, as in Wallachia and Moldavia. In fact, we know that in 1571, Stefan Báthory had been nominated by the Porte even before he was elected by the Diet. He was the third Báthory to come to the throne of Transylvania, with no less than 4 more to follow. Let us remember his reign as an attempt to stave off the decline of Catholicism. He brought in the Jesuits, among others, but also for his exceptional election to the throne of Poland in 1576, where he reigned as king until his death in 1586, leading to a measure of neglect towards the Principality. Following the death of Suleiman the Magnificent in 1566, the Ottoman throne was taken up by a succession of mediocre sultans who, in addition, faced great difficulties on the eastern border of the empire in the form of wars with the Persians, who were going through a golden age under Shah Abbas. With support from the Pope, the new Habsburg Emperor Rudolf II, crowned in 1576, decided to take advantage of the situation and formed a new coalition together with Spain, Venice, several Italian duchies, and eventually Poland in yet another attempt to expel the Turks from Europe. Thus, Transylvania, Moldavia and Wallachia would find themselves on the front lines of the new alliance. This was the international context that saw the meteoric rise of Michael the Brave.